Hello and welcome back to Demo Disc Deep Dive, where we take an in-depth look at the video game demos everyone else has forgotten about. After taking a look at the second issue of the official US PlayStation magazine in our last episode, it's time to pick up where we left off and go over PlayStation magazine's third issue. Before we get into the demo disc, let's go over the magazine itself. Aside from a couple short interviews with developers Polygon Magic and Chronos, the majority of this issue is dedicated to your typical reviews, previews, and advertisements for upcoming games and console peripherals for the holiday season. One of the few articles that does stand out is a guide for creating a near virtual reality setup, complete with a 32-inch CRT TV, Yamaha audio receiver, and the Energy Take 5 speaker system for around $2,300, or you could make the Bill Gates system, which clocks in at a whopping $30,000 with a Roomco DTV852 CRT video projector, the Lexicon DC1 surround sound processor, and the System 450 THX speaker system. Aside from that, we also have some ads for Game Shark, The Glove, and Croc Legend of the Gobos, featuring Crash Bandicoot, Lara Croft, and everyone's favorite, legally distinct Italian man. So with that out of the way, it's time to continue our journey through the lost era of demo discs. Let's dive into these bite-sized playtests, watch all the trailers and promotional videos, figure out what changed in their full releases, and at the end, decide which one offers the best demo experience. This is Demo Disc Deep Dive. Booting up the demo disc, we're greeted by the familiar PlayStation and PSM splash screens, along with the usual space-themed intro cinematic. But unlike the previous demo discs, we now have a new demo selection menu. Opting for a descending list instead of the grid layout, we're now able to see the game's logos, titles, and a small screenshot within a tube-filled underwater scene. And when looking at the selection of demos we'll be playing through today, you can tell they each fall into a distinct category. Instead of being a collection of games from vastly different genres, Demo Disc 3 is neatly divided into racing games and fighting games, though one demo does break the mold a bit. And with only one video to watch, that means we have 8 playable demos to get through. So with no time to lose, let's jump right in. Starting off with the second entry in Sony's Extreme Racing Game series, we have the demo for Jet Moto 2. After the usual control screen, we're taken to Jet Moto's main menu, complete with background music and 2 game modes for us to choose from. So let's start off with one player mode, where the demo automatically chooses the Max as our rider, sponsored by Mountain Dew. After a short loading screen showing off the course, the timer counts down and our first race begins. The first thing you'll notice about Jet Moto 2 is that it is fast. Right out the gate, you can tell it doesn't play like your typical racing game. Since the vehicles are hover bikes, the controls feel more like a jet ski than a traditional motorcycle. Between the normal and tight turns, rolling your bike side to side, and angling your nose up and down, the gameplay is all about navigating the bumpy terrain while minimizing your time spent in the air. Because despite the fact that they're hover bikes, every second you're midair is time you're spending not accelerating, so trying to stay grounded as much as possible is incredibly important. And while you're doing that, you can't forget the trees, ramps, and 9 other racers that you need to avoid colliding with. It's also worth noting that the demo doesn't support the use of analog control. Personally, I find the D-pad more intuitive for precise steering, so for me, it's not too big of a deal. The volcano course itself is pretty straightforward. Being a narrow line full of winding turns, the starting line is actually in the middle of the track. After driving past the palm trees and going to the inner part of the island, a wide right turn takes you around the base of the volcano and into one of the aptly named suicide turns. During these turns, you can hold circle to use your grapple and swing around the center pylon, launching yourself back out the way you came. but make sure to avoid getting too close or too far, as it can send you flying off your bike or drastically reduce your speed. Now racing in the opposite direction, you need to avoid the other racers speeding towards you, because colliding with them will instantly knock you off your bike. And once that happens, your chances of winning are basically zero. After passing the starting line, the beach portion of the track begins with a patch of sand dunes, some wide open water, and the second suicide turn of the course. Crossing the starting line a second time finishes the first lap, and if you've been using it, refills your boost gauge back to full. Boosting is done by holding down triangle and is the best way to quickly build up speed. So if you use it all up too early in a lap, you'll find yourself struggling to keep up with everyone else. I personally found the best success by only using it in very small bursts to quickly get back into the race after jumps and crashes. After going through the course once again and completing the second lap, a quick splash screen talks about what to look forward to in the full release before sending you back to the demo disc main menu. Now that we've finished the one-player mode, let's take a look at head-to-head mode, which is a two-player race along the same volcano course as before. While player 1 is forced into playing the max again, player 2 gets to try out Vampira, who has slightly more weight along with a much higher top speed. And I actually found Vampira more fun to play, with her acceleration making the small bumps a bit more forgiving. I gotta say, the fact that she is playable in the head-to-head mode makes me wonder why they didn't just give you both racers to choose from to begin with. It feels like a missed opportunity to add a little more variety without much extra effort. As you would expect, the head-to-head mode is a great addition to any demo, adding a ton of replayability provided you have someone to play with. If you don't have someone to play with, like me, this mode is an excellent way to practice the course without constantly worrying about the other racers crashing into you, though you do have to deal with a lot less peripheral vision. Now it's time to take a look at what changed by the time Jet Moto 2 finally released, starting right at the main menu. If you look closely, the background graphic has been updated, removing the crack in the windshield while also making the waterfall a darker shade of blue. Now moving on to the character select screen. Aside from the obvious changes of more characters and now being able to select our rider, we can see that the Max's portrait has been zoomed in for the full release. Both the Max's and Vampira's stats have also been updated, making both of them slightly lighter in exchange for boost to top speed and acceleration. And their character models now have less saturated colors, making them more accurate to their in-game appearance. Going into an actual race, the loading screen has also been updated, changing the track name to Meltdown, changing the flavor text at the bottom of the screen, and making the track layout more accurate to the actual course. But in exchange for the added accuracy, they did remove the vibrant colors and small details like the lava flows on the left-hand side. In the race itself, the lighting has also been brightened, giving the feeling of midday rather than the light sunset of the demo. The race also starts with all racers in a line rather than grouped up in the middle. The default number of laps is now 3 instead of 2. The mini-map now has colored icons for the racers. The numbers on each bike are now bold and easier to read. On the beach portion of the track, they added a couple sailboats in the background. And if you listen really closely, the countdown beep has been slightly changed. That's all of the changes I could find from the Jet Moto 2 demo to its full release. Even though the demo is limited to a single course across both game modes, it's a very technical racing game with a solid learning curve for those that want to improve. The short length of each race and minimal loading times between sessions also makes it easy to jump back in once you start to learn the course. The inclusion of head-to-head mode also lets you play with someone else while giving you a stress-free way to practice the course on your own. That said, the control scheme isn't perfect. With the boost button being on the opposite end of the accelerator, you have to use a sort of claw grip in order to quickly boost and maintain your speed. And after just a few races, your hand definitely starts to cramp up. Moving on to our next demo, we have a much more grounded racing game, pun intended, with Test Drive 4. Starting off with around 30 seconds of unskippable trademark information combined with a loading screen, we're taken to the demo's main menu. By pressing start, we then get to choose between two cars for the demo, the 1998 Dodge Viper and the 1967 AC Cobra, though you are able to look at the 5 other car models that'll be in the full game. The only track available is based on Keswick, England, taking you through the gloomy English countryside along with 5 other racers. And with these being public roads, you have to avoid crashing into both them and the civilian cars driving throughout the track. Hitting a car at high enough speed will cause you to spin out, forcing you to reorient yourself and costing you valuable time. After the first few turns through the farmland, the course heads into the mountains and through the first tunnel. But with the only lighting coming from the tunnel walls and no way to turn on your headlights, it's almost impossible to see the oncoming traffic until you crash straight into it. This tunnel also has the first police officer you'll come across. As soon as you pass a police officer, they'll turn on their sirens and start chasing you. And if they're able to get ahead of you, they'll instantly pull you over and wait a few seconds before letting you go. Leaving the tunnel, you'll reach the first checkpoint, which adds 40 seconds onto the timer at the top of the screen. If you're not able to cross the next checkpoint before it reaches 0, the screen will fade to white and the demo prematurely ends, complete with another 30 seconds of screenshots promoting the full release before sending you back to the demo disc's main menu. If you are able to make it through the next checkpoint before the timer runs out, the course continues with some more shallow turns, some hot air balloons, and a small portion along the river. And after the second checkpoint, you'll drive through a small village before the second darkness-filled cave. But if you can avoid the oncoming traffic, you'll reach the third checkpoint and the demo will once again fade to white. That's pretty much everything to say about the demo. The controls are pretty simple, with the only gameplay buttons being your accelerator, brake, and steering left or right. You can also honk your horn, but that has no gameplay functionality. And the magazine does praise the environment mapping on the car's windshield as some incredible technology. But during a race, the effect is really subtle. When looking at the full release of Test Drive 4, after the intro cinematic, the trademark info is now presented in a different order, with Dodge's trademark info now being before Chevrolet's. The start menu has also been changed with an official logo, new background, and some much appreciated music. Jumping into a one-player race, we can see the changes made to the cars themselves. The 1998 Dodge Viper's acceleration has been slightly increased, and the incorrect conversion from pounds to kilograms has been fixed. The 1967 AC Cobra has also been renamed to the 1996 Shelby Cobra, and its top speed has been increased from 165 miles per hour to 187. Looking at the top speeds in the demo, you can see they got that conversion wrong as well. The order of the cars has also been rearranged, with the full version adding 4 new cars while locking the GTSR behind winning the Pit Bull Cup. And the names for some of the cars have been updated, while the spinning 3D logos in the bottom right have actually been removed in the full version. Before starting the race, we can now choose whether we want an automatic or manual transmission, using L1 and R1 to shift up and down. Looking at the UI, the top left of the screen now says time instead of record, and the speedometer no longer has the miles per hour listed on it. During the race, each racer is now a unique car instead of having duplicates like in the demo. The car's engine sounds have also been updated, so they no longer share the same audio. And because I noticed this, you have to know it too. The tire screeches have been made even louder in the full version, and they honestly sound a lot like Tom screaming in Tom and Jerry. The biggest change from the demo which was teased in the splash screens at the end of it, is that crashes are now fully 3D. Instead of simply spinning out after a collision, both you and the other car can completely flip over, taking even longer to get back into the race afterward, and making mistakes even more punishing than in the demo. This 3D element also lets you catch a little bit of air when speeding over bumps in the road. The Keswick track itself also has some minor changes. The most noticeable one is if you look at the background in certain areas, you can see they actually lowered the skybox by quite a bit. The rain now doesn't start until after the first turn in the track. The first jet that flies overhead is now accompanied by a smaller one going the opposite direction. The tunnel lights don't cast as warm a light as before, though you still can't see anything. And the final, and probably most important change that I found, is that they removed the little rabbit that runs along the road near the start of the race. Overall, the Test Drive 4 demo is a fairly simple but solid racing game. If you prefer a more realistic style of gameplay, it offers a roughly 3-minute long race with some nice scenery against some pretty competent opponents. Once again, I was only able to stay in front for a few turns before the other racers completely left me in the dust. But whether that's because of me or the fact they seem quite a bit faster than my car out the gate, I'll leave up to you. The main downside is that while the course doesn't loop, a lot of the track feels similar, with large sections being straight roads with only slight turns in each direction. And with over a minute of required downtime between races, the novelty wears off quicker than most. Now, if you've been keeping up with Demo Disc Deep Dive for the past couple episodes, you'll recognize our next game from both the cover story for the first issue of PSM and the video included in Demo Disc 2 that probably gave a few kids some seizures. So let's jump right in and finally check out the demo for Ghost in the Shell. After a few developer splash screens, we're taken to the demo's main menu. While all of the options are available to look at, the only functional button is Mission Start. After we select it, we're treated to a mission briefing fully voiced by the English cast of the original movie.
Control to Kusanagi.
Kusanagi here.
The terrorists are definitely in the bay proximity. They're tracking us.
Any fix on their command center yet?
We can't get a visual by satellite, but it's set up in a warehouse. You'll have to get in and shut them down.
Roger.
The warehouse doors are secured and the building's made out of reinforced steel. The Fujikomos won't be able to break through it.
You're kidding. How do we get in then? Ring the doorbell?
There are 4 key codes needed to enter the building. Take out the targets positioned along the outer perimeter in order to obtain the codes.
Roger and out.
I'm picking up a lot of dispersed light dead ahead, and judging by the heat emissions, it's a combat signature.
All units, prepare to engage.
Starting at the edge of the bay, we're tasked with collecting the 4 key codes held by different enemies around the map. And I know this isn't actually a racing game like the other demos, but you do drive a giant mechanical spider, so I'm counting it anyway. In order to pilot your mech, technically called a Fujikoma, the demo uses tank controls with up and down moving you forward and backward, and left and right turning. The left and right triggers allow you to strafe in either direction, and if you hold down both of them, pressing up or down will also allow you to dash forward and backward. But the most unique aspect of the movement is that you're not limited to the ground. You can stick to practically every surface on the map in order to avoid enemies, get better angles on their weak spots, and jump between vantage points. In terms of weapons, tapping the square button repeatedly will fire your machine gun, and holding down square will lock on to the nearest target before firing a barrage of missiles. You can also fire super powerful grenades with circle, but you have a limited supply available for the mission. Roaming around the map are human enemies, white robots that fire missiles, helicopters patrolling the area, and blue robots that each carry one of the 4 key codes needed to unlock the warehouse. You can also find a few collectibles scattered around, including energy packs that restore your shields, and some additional grenades to replenish your stock. Once you defeat the 4 blue robots around the map and obtain the necessary key codes, you can then proceed into the warehouse. Inside, we find the boss for the level, a giant enemy mech that can turn invisible, shoot bullets, launch missiles, and has a giant 360-degree laser beam attack. Unfortunately, the boss isn't really that difficult. Considering climbing along the walls makes it hard to get a clean shot on him, the main strategy is to just strafe around him while firing your machine gun and occasionally jumping over his laser attack. The music that has been playing throughout the level also stops once you enter the warehouse, adding to the underwhelming nature of the fight. Once you defeat the boss, the mission ends showing your final score, with points being awarded based on how quickly you completed the mission, your remaining shield, and how many grenades you have left. You're then sent back to the demo's main menu where you can immediately start the mission again. Thankfully, you can also skip the mission briefing to get right into the demo without waiting. And if you don't want to follow the intended path for the mission, you can do that too. With no time limit and the enemies outside the warehouse respawning, you can instead spend your time traversing the environment, looking for the collectibles, and fighting the various enemies for as long as you want. When looking at the full version of Ghost in the Shell, there actually aren't many changes. In fact, the only ones I could find are the obvious inclusion of an intro cinematic before the mission briefing, and the mission music now playing when you're inside the warehouse. Other than that, the demo is a one-to-one copy of the full version in basically every way. The Ghost in the Shell demo does two things very well. The buildings scattered around the map are an excellent showcase of the game's unique climbing mechanics, and the respawning enemies allow you to fight wave after wave without any time restrictions. While the difficulty is pretty low, it's a fun sandbox that shows off what makes the game unique among its peers. Next up, we have our last racing demo of the day, the motorcycle arcade racing game, Moto Racer. After some short developer splash screens, we're taken to the demo's main menu. With no music and the only sound being our selection arrow, the only options available to us are Speed Bay and Dirt Arena, each one focusing on a different type of motorcycle race. So let's go in order and start with Speed Bay. After a short loading screen and countdown, the race begins. And the first thing you'll notice is that the Moto Racer demo surprisingly reuses the music from the Jet Moto 2 demo. Gameplay-wise, the Speed Bay course emphasizes making a lot of turns at high speeds. Along with your normal acceleration with X, circle is your turbo, popping a wheelie and quickly reaching your top speed. And when you're at your top speed, avoiding the barriers and the 7 other racers is crucial if you don't want to be sent flying off your bike. Unfortunately, the high speed combined with the checkpoint system, requiring you to quickly go through the course, means there's very little time spent inside the demo. With the race ending after just one lap, your final time is going to hover around just a minute. Whether you finish the race by crossing the finish line or running out of time, the demo ends with a minute-long slideshow, including screenshots and info on what will be included in the full game. Starting the demo again, we can now go in and try Dirt Arena. Unlike Speed Bay, Dirt Arena is all about motocross. Instead of racing at high speeds, the course is filled with bumps and ramps, and by pressing circle when you're in midair, you can perform a variety of tricks. While the Dirt Arena course is also limited to one lap, the length of the course at least makes the race last around 2 minutes. One other thing to note is that unlike Speed Bay, this course doesn't have any music, just the sound of your motorcycle on the dirt road. And just like the other course, the demo ends with the same minute-long slideshow before sending you to the demo disc's main menu. Now you're probably thinking that there really isn't a lot going on with this demo, and with each session having an unskippable slideshow that takes either half as long or the same amount of time as the race itself, I would agree. But what if I told you there was an unintended way to make the shortest demo on this disc into one of the longest? As we already discussed, the Moto Racer demo automatically ends once you cross the finish line or run out of time, at which point your accelerator will no longer work. But the demo doesn't actually end when your timer runs out. Once the timer hits 0, you actually still have control of your bike, a mechanic implemented so you have a few second grace period to cross the next checkpoint and regain some time. Though unless you're right before a checkpoint when this happens, the leftover momentum you have won't be enough and you will eventually come to a stop, prompting the demo to officially end. But while the developers disabled your accelerator once the timer hits 0, they didn't disable your turbo, So even if the timer runs out, you can continue the race by regularly pressing your turbo until you reach the next checkpoint and can use the accelerator again. But this trick only helps so much. Even though the timer is no longer a limiting factor for the demo, you'll still eventually reach the finish line and end it that way. That's where the second half of this trick comes in. Like basically every racing game, checkpoints only count if you have already crossed the one before it. A simple design choice that prevents players from simply driving backward and forward to complete a lap. So instead of driving forward like every other racer, we're going to turn around and drive the opposite direction. Not only does this give us an essentially new track to race on, it also means that after the timer runs out and we have to rely on our turbo, crossing the finish line no longer counts as a lap. What was once a 1-minute demo is now an endurance challenge, seeing how long you can continue to race while avoiding the walls and other racers trying to crash into you head on. And this trick works on both Speed Bay and Dirt Arena, adding a fresh spin and a lot of replayability to an otherwise very short demo. In the full version of Moto Racer, we start off with new animated logos for Electronic Arts and Delphine Software, a new intro cinematic, and an updated main menu complete with an animated background and music. With new options for difficulty settings, we also have an updated course selection screen. After choosing our course, we can now select our bike and choose from a few pre-made control schemes. The default control scheme has also been changed from the demo, with circle now being used to change the camera, and L2 and R2 performing your turbo and stunts. The option to drive a manual transmission bike has also been added, requiring you to gear up and down with L1 and R1. In the race itself, a few changes are immediately noticeable. Along with the camera now panning around you during the countdown, a map of the track has been added to the bottom left of the screen. Your speed is now measured in miles per hour, and the starting time on the Speed Bay course has been reduced from 50 seconds to 40. And both courses, unsurprisingly, have original music added. Continuing further down the track, we can also see that the turn icons have been made a little less saturated from their demo counterparts. And of course, the trick for continuing the race after the timer runs out has been fixed, with both the accelerator and turbo now being disabled once the timer reaches 0. The Moto Racer demo is pretty simple on the surface. With the two courses showcasing the two types of gameplay the full game offers, the short race times combined with a long, unskippable slideshow hampers the demo's replay value. But with the backwards racing trick circumventing that issue, while also making two, technically new tracks to race on, this otherwise average demo now has a lot more to offer, including a unique way to play that even the full version doesn't have. With all of the racing games out of the way, let's take a quick intermission to watch the only video available on Demo Disc 3, giving us a sneak peek at the action platformer 1. Compared to the other videos we've seen in this series so far, this one is actually pretty solid. It's nothing too crazy, just some gameplay clips with some music overlaid, but it shows off the different environments and bosses you'll be facing, while leaving enough out that your imagination can fill in the rest. Now in the second half of the disc, it's time to go through the 4 fighting game demos available to us, starting off with one that's surprisingly inspired by American gang culture. Versus. On the starting screen, the demo actually has a disclaimer that due to size constraints, the exciting alternative music in the game couldn't be included. Pressing X, the only available option is 1 player versus CPU. We're then taken to the character select screen, and while you can look around at the full roster, only the DJ Mia and taxi driver Oleg are available to play. Though if you do a mirror match, you can see their alternate costumes, with the PSM writer describing Mia's as Schwing. But before we get into the match, the config menu is actually functional. This menu lets us change the length of each round, the number of rounds in a game, adjust the volume, change the health for each player, and we can even adjust the controls to map some attack combinations to the unused buttons. Once we're done choosing our settings, we can start the match. And while it's loading, there's also a sliding puzzle minigame you can play, but the game will eventually start on its own, even if you haven't pressed the start button.
Round one, brawl!
The only arena available in the demo is the disco, and with the lack of any music, you just have to imagine it's one of those silent discos where once you take off the headphones, all you hear are people's shoes squeaking on the floor. Now let's talk about the characters themselves. Mia's fighting style revolves around quick punches and kicks, and obviously takes a lot of inspiration from breakdancing. Oleg, on the other hand, is a grappler with a couple powerful throws, but his long limbs and quick attack speed also make him good at keeping opponents at a distance. Both characters have a variety of combos available to them, performed using a combination of directional inputs and the punch and kick buttons. Something the magazine actually got wrong is that pressing back and triangle isn't a grapple. Instead, it's a high counter that both Mia and Oleg can perform. The actual grapples are performed by pressing punch and evade at the same time, with Oleg also having a special grapple performed with back punch and evade, and Mia's special grapple having a back forward punch and evade combo. Being a 3D fighter, you can also move along the Z axis by pressing evade, set to square by default, and either up and down to sidestep attacks. If you get too far from your opponent, holding evade and moving toward them will make you run, allowing you to perform some special attacks as well. And finally, pressing evade while moving away from your opponent will perform a high counter if timed correctly. And if you're playing as Mia, you can also perform a low counter by pressing down, punch, and kick at the same time. After you or your opponent win the majority of the rounds, the match will end with a victory screen. While Mia's victory screen is silent, Oleg has a few words he wants to say. When the match is over, the developer splash screens will play again, and you'll be sent back to the demos menu, allowing you to quickly get back into another match. Unfortunately, the settings you change in the config menu don't carry over between matches, so you'll have to adjust the settings you like every time. And while sending you back to the demos menu instead of the discs is great for replayability, Versus couldn't make it that easy. While you are able to play multiple matches back to back, the demo itself has a hidden 7-minute timer. When the timer runs out, no matter what you're doing, you'll be kicked back to the demo disc's main menu. All things considered, this isn't the end of the world since the loading screens are short. But if you have to be kicked out of the demo anyways, I would have preferred it to at least be consistent and do it after each match. The way it's implemented means you have to guess whether you have enough time left for another match, and if you don't, you either have to manually exit the demo to restart the timer yourself, or start a match anyway and get kicked out halfway through. A minor detail about the Versus demo is that if you sit around on the menus for long enough, demo videos will start playing with two CPUs fighting each other, and the characters included actually change based on what characters you have selected in the character select screen. Quick note for me as I'm almost done editing the video, but the demo videos are actually not limited to Mia and Oleg like I initially believed. By hovering over the X'd out characters without selecting them, you actually get to see that character fighting against whichever fighter you have selected as player 1. So along with having a nice bit of background gameplay to watch, we're also able to see each of the 16 characters in the full release and what they play like. Alright, back to the video. And the final thing of note is the fighter AI. While playing normally, attacking, evading, trying to find openings, your opponent is actually pretty decent. The problem is when you're not playing normally. Unlike most fighting games, you don't need to hold the direction opposite of your opponent in order to block. Simply not inputting anything will block all high attacks thrown at you. And outside of occasionally throwing you or hitting you with a low attack, the CPU doesn't really know what to do when you aren't doing anything, making fights a lot easier once you realize this behavior. Though this isn't a major issue since choosing to play this way is a choice you can make for yourself, and this isn't as noticeable when playing against Oleg due to him preferring grabs over his regular attacks. When looking at the full version of Versus, the first change is that the Polygon Magic logo has actually been removed, quite a surprising change considering they are the game's developer. And while an intro cinematic is an expected addition to any game, this one is just too good not to show you. What was the point of that? You have all these 3D models of your fighting game characters, and all you do is have them blankly stare at each other before running away? This is probably the most uncanny intro cinematic to any game I have ever seen. And don't forget, that guy casually jumping 30 feet in the air, he's a recycler. Man, this game is weird. Well, with that little tangent out of the way, let's keep looking at what changed since the demo. On the title screen, the logo has been changed to a simpler all-orange version, and the trademark font is now all capital letters instead of having giant O's, N's, M's, and G's. We can also see that New Game has been simply changed to Game, and when selecting it, the mode select screen is now a metallic green instead of the bronze in the demo. The option menu that was on this screen in the demo has also been moved to the title screen, and this is where you change your controls instead of in the config menu before a match. And speaking of the config menu, it has also been renamed to Option. While the menus and character select still don't have music like the demo, there are quite a few minor changes in the character select screen. We can see that the misspelled tattoo in Car's description has been corrected, but the most common change is the heights of a bunch of characters being adjusted. When you do start a match, the CPU will now also complete the tile puzzle, automatically starting the match once they finish. Now let's look at the changes during an actual match. For the UI, the timer has been changed from a gradient orange to white. A new flame icon has been added under each fighter's health bar, and the combo counter no longer shows up under your rounds won. Instead, your combo pops up next to your opponent, along with what I assume is the damage dealt by the attack. And when you land your standard punch and kick attack, a new lightning effect now courses through your opponent. During a knockout, the screen now flashes white and brings in the top and bottom of the screen. Aside from that, the AI seems to have been improved to better handle the strategy of standing still, and the inclusion of the exciting alternative music is also appreciated. The Versus demo is a pretty standard 3D fighter with a surprising amount of customization for a fighting game demo. Being able to adjust the health levels, controls, and the number of rounds really lets you fine-tune it to your preferences. With 4 possible matchups you can play, there's quite a bit of mileage you can get out of it. And you can't forget the puzzle during the loading screen. While small, it does set it apart from every demo on this disc. Continuing down the list, we have the medieval fantasy fighter, Cardinal Sin. And jumping into it, we have a fully animated title screen with some pretty decent music to set the mood. Pressing start, we're shown a short loading screen before being thrown into the final round of a match, and you'll instantly realize that your opponent doesn't do anything. And looking at the magazine, we see that the Cardinal Sin demo is 2-player only, with player 1 controlling Vanguard and player 2 controlling Orion. Now, a 2-player mode in a demo is great. Being able to try out a new game with your friend or sibling adds a lot to these inherently short pieces of gameplay. But it's important to realize that if you're deciding on a game to play together, most demos are going to be pretty low on the list compared to literally any other co-op game. So while a 2-player mode is a great bonus to have, especially for a fighting game, not having a single-player experience alienates the most common type of player that actually plays these demos: the kid or teenager playing in their spare time, looking for their next purchase. Even if we can't play the demo as intended, we can still look at the gameplay and what it has to offer. Both characters have access to vertical, horizontal, and low attacks using the triangle, square, and X buttons, which can be strung together for various combos. R1 lets you jump, and your standing and low block are circle and R2 respectively. Pressing L1 will perform a shove, and like a lot of 3D fighters, holding L2 lets you run around the arena, though it does feel a bit clunky. Like I said before, player 1 will always control Vanguard, who uses a broadsword for long-reaching slashes. He also has a magic attack that can be performed with up-up triangle, but it has no sound effect and deals no damage. Player 2 on the other hand controls Orion, a faster rogue-type character that uses quick slashes and kicks. By performing down-down triangle, you can also shoot a low-damage crossbow bolt. And I noticed that her overhead combo doesn't actually connect, because the knockback caused by the first hit knocks him out of the range of the second. For the arena itself, the only one available is the castle gate. With some orchestrated music in the background, there's also 3 crates scattered around the arena. The one near the drawbridge contains a yellow potion that heals you when you reach low health. The second crate has a bomb that will deal damage in a small area around it, and the chest contains a sword that increases your damage. Once you defeat your opponent, a short victory screen will play before a coming soon splash screen sends you to the demo disc main menu. And that's really all there is to say about the demo. Without a second player, it mainly acts as a way to practice different combos, but even then, your opponent will either die too quickly or be pushed into a corner where your attacks will bounce off the wall before they hit them. Now let's look at the full release of Cardinal Sin. After a 3-minute long intro cinematic that plays when you boot up the game, we see an updated loading screen before the main menu. Now able to choose different modes, we can check out the training mode to find the majority of changes from the demo. Selecting the map from the demo, now named Vanguard, there's already a few changes that we can see. First of all, the lighting has become a lot flatter in the full release, with the shadows on the walls and floor becoming noticeably lighter. The arena also now has crossbows that periodically come out of the walls to fire arrows. Both characters' attacks are a bit faster than the demo version and have new combo strings available. Each hit also now has particle effects, along with the added blood splatter from attacks, now leaving puddles on the floor. And when your opponent is grounded, you can now repeatedly attack them by first pressing R1 square, followed by R1X. For Vanguard, his magic attack is now functional, calling down a bolt of lightning on his opponent, though it does now require collecting a blue potion during a match. He also has a new projectile attack performed with forward R1. Orion's overhead combo has been updated, now with both hits properly connecting. Her crossbow projectile attack has also been made smaller, though she has a new magic attack that uses the old projectile along with a glowing effect. And both characters now have the fatalities that were mentioned in the magazine. After performing specific combos, the final hit will instantly kill the opponent, complete with copious amounts of blood and an instant replay. Going into an actual match, the round text is now centered on the screen instead of in the lower third, and the announcer's voice has been changed.
Begin.
The UI has been updated with a new look for the round markers, a counter for the number of magic attacks you can perform, and if you look closely, the dragons on the health bars are now squinting slightly. The fighters now start farther apart than in the demo, and instead of a bomb, the second crate on Vanguard now contains a blue potion. Finally, new victory music plays at the end of a match, along with sounds from the fighter instead of silence. As a 2-player demo, Cardinal Sin has all the basics of a fighting game, but with a lot of combos and mechanics missing from the full release, and with certain combos not working as intended, you can tell it's not the best representation of the final product. And without a proper way to experience it on your own, it ends up leaving a lot to be desired. For the next fighting game we'll be looking at, we have probably the most unique fighter on the disc, Bushido Blade. After starting the demo, we're taken directly to the character select screen where we can choose between 6 unique fighters, but this choice is mostly cosmetic. Bushido Blade's combat is centered around the different weapon types available, with all characters sharing the same weapon moveset, aside from a couple special attacks that we'll look at later. Once you and your opponent's character are selected, you're dropped into the school grounds, both wielding wooden katanas. And you'll notice that there's no health bars, meters, or actually any UI for that matter. Rather than a traditional fighting game, Bushido Blade aims to be a more realistic sword fighting simulator, where fights can end in a single well-placed blow, or drag on with both fighters barely able to move. So let's go over the actual gameplay. You have 3 different stances you can be standing in at any time: high, middle, and low, which you cycle between using the R1 and R2 buttons. While in these stances, you can perform either high, middle, or low attacks using triangle, circle, and X. Directional inputs can then be combined with these for a wide variety of attacks based on which stance you are currently using. Thankfully, if you were lucky enough to get the second issue of PlayStation Magazine when it was released, there's actually a combo guide for Bushido Blade that lists all the combos for each weapon. But attacking is only half the battle. Your katana will automatically block attacks coming from certain directions based on the stance you are currently in. The middle stance will block most attacks aside from extremely high or low ones. Your high stance will block overhead attacks, and the offensive focused low stance doesn't block any. But blocking like this is not the optimal way to stay alive, since blocking attacks will stagger you and leave you open for follow-ups. This is where parrying comes in. Pressing square will perform a quick parry, and if timed right as an attack connects, will block the attack without being staggered. This brief window allows you to then reposition or start a counterattack of your own, with the tide of battle shifting between offense and defense frequently. The main goal of the demo, like any fighting game, is to defeat your opponent, and this can be done with a single fatal blow to the head or stomach, or become a grueling, drawn-out battle. Being struck in the arm or leg can leave you injured, unable to perform certain combos or even walk, and after trading a few blows back and forth, you can be left with 2 injured fighters desperately throwing themselves at each other on the ground. Eventually, you'll either defeat your opponent or be defeated, at which point you'll both respawn after a few seconds, ready to continue your duel. And that's the Bushido Blade demo. With no time limit, you can practice your swordsmanship and duel for as long as you want. Since respawning keeps you in the same location where the last duel ended, you can even stay in the section of the map you prefer, whether that's the main pathway, the sand garden, or even atop the planter with the cherry blossom trees. While there isn't any music, I actually prefer the ambient bird noises, though once you realize it's just a couple second loop, it can feel a bit repetitive. Aside from that, the only other info about the demo is that 2 characters do have special combos not shared by anyone else. Utsusumi, the old man in the yellow robe, has a one-handed overhead strike, a sweeping upward slice, a spinning stab attack, and a fast combo with a long wind-up time. Black Lotus, the man wearing a white and blue outfit, has 3 special moves all in the high stance: a step with a diagonal slice, a low spinning attack, and a multi-hit overhead combo. When looking at the full release of Bushido Blade, we can see that the Japanese writing on the loading screen has actually been replaced with the game's English name. The character select screen has also been translated, now displaying the names of each character as you hover over them. Along with new music during character selection, and now using X to select your character instead of circle, we can choose the desired weapon for each character. After selecting them, the fighters now bow to each other before the match begins. The game mode the demo is based on is called Training, and by selecting the arena, Cherry Blossom Grove, we can recreate the setting of the demo. Along with the addition of blood splatters and a score at the top tracking each character's wins, music has also been added. Though personally, I prefer the ambient noise from the demo. The final change I was able to find is pausing the game now says pause instead of simply freezing the screen, though the only thing you can do in this menu is unpause just like in the demo. Overall, the Bushido Blade demo is a great showcase of the full game. While most characters play the same and there's only one weapon type, the demo stands out as a fighting game that's simple in presentation but deep in its gameplay. And with a solid level of difficulty and no limit on playtime, Bushido Blade is the demo I easily spent the most time playing on this disc. For the last demo we'll be looking at today, we have what was probably one of the most anticipated games releasing at the time. With the last Star Wars game on the PlayStation being the on-rail shooter Rebel Assault 2 back in 1995, Masters of Teras Kasi is the first and only fighting game based on the franchise. With an entire page dedicated solely to this demo, you can tell this was one of the major selling points for this disc. So let's jump right in and check out Star Wars Masters of Teras Kasi. After a short loading screen and the LucasArts logo animation, we're taken to the title screen complete with classic Star Wars music. For the demo, we have access to two modes, the single-player arcade mode and the two-player versus mode, so let's start with arcade. On the character select screen, we can get a preview of all the characters that'll be in the final game, like Han Solo, Chewbacca, and everyone's favorite, Thok and Hor. But for this demo, the only characters available are Luke Skywalker and the original character Arden Lin, the mysterious disciple of the martial art Teras Kasi. Once you choose your character, your opponent will randomly be selected from the two available, wearing their alternate costume if it is a mirror match. And I know the magazine says the AI is a bit more difficult than the final version, but how hard can it really be? Alright, this is a bit much. In terms of complexity, Masters of Teras Kasi is pretty standard for a fighting game. Instead of having high, middle, and low attacks, square and triangle are your left and right punches, and X and circle are your left and right kicks. These attacks can then be combined with directional inputs and chained together to perform the various special attacks and combos available. You can also perform grabs by pressing circle and square or triangle and X, which are probably the least intuitive button combos they could have chosen. Being another 3D fighter, you can of course move around the arena. By pressing L1 or L2, you'll sidestep either forward or backward, and because not all attacks can be blocked, you'll need to do this in order to evade them. Now you're probably thinking, this doesn't seem too bad. Yeah, the controls are a little unorthodox for a 3D fighter, but it just takes a bit of practice to get used to. While the AI is at a pretty high level, a good challenge at least gives you something to strive toward instead of just steamrolling it in the first 20 minutes. And I agree. Except the game's controls do not respond well at all. Normally, fighting games have a bit of rhythm for their combos, timing the next input when the previous attack lands, so you can properly react if it's blocked or avoided. Masters of Teras Kasi wants you to input each attack within a fraction of a second of each other, so most of your combos will just be a single attack since the rest didn't even register. Or you do commit to a combo, and it's immediately blocked and countered because your brain is still trying to figure out the next button you have to press. Not to mention, the process of getting up after being knocked down has a couple second delay before you can do anything. But if you do avoid getting stomped on repeatedly while knocked down, at least you can do this. Alright, enough complaining about the gameplay. Let's keep going over what the demo includes. One of the main features of Masters of Teras Kasi is the weapon system. By default, your character has a specific moveset available to them, and by pressing R2, they'll pull out their specific weapon and swap to a different moveset. While I understand why they chose Luke and Arden as the demo fighters, one being the main character of the movies and the other being the main antagonist of the game, they unfortunately don't show off this mechanic well at all. Without his lightsaber, Luke only has a couple punches and kicks that he can use, meaning each round he has to start off by pulling out his lightsaber, which leaves him open to an attack. Arden, on the other hand, doesn't have a weapon at all, so not only does this demo not show off one of the more unique aspects of the game, it also puts Luke at a sizable disadvantage at the start of every round. In terms of stages, 2 are available in the demo: the Bespin Carbon Freezing Chamber and Tatooine. While the Bespin stage is circular and the Tatooine one is regular, you're able to win a round either by reducing your opponent's health to 0 or by getting a ring out, leading to this awesome floating animation. And I'll be honest, the only 2 times I was able to beat Arden Lin was by getting a lucky ring out. With arcade mode finished, let's check out the versus mode. As you would probably expect, this mode is designed for 2 players to fight against each other. Or if you don't have anyone to play with, this serves as a decent way to practice the special moves and combos. But make sure you don't accidentally knock over your opponent, because if you do, they'll never get back up, meaning you either have to wait for the timer to run out or restart the demo yourself. Speaking of waiting for the timer to run out, I actually found a really interesting quirk that you wouldn't normally find. Each stage has its own music track associated with it, but they're each just shy of the 60-second time limit for each round. On Bespin, the first notes of the Tatooine theme will play right before the next round starts.
Draw game. Round 2.
And more interesting, if you reach the end of the round on Tatooine, the demo disc main menu music will start to play.
Timeout. Draw game. Round.
I'm not sure how these demo discs are programmed, but this, combined with Moto Racer using Jet Moto 2's music, has got me thinking. My hypothesis is that all the demos on a disc pull from the same list of audio files for their music. And since Masters of Teras Kasi is the last playable demo, I think its music transition loops back to the top of that list, the main menu theme. If anyone knows more about how these demo discs are made, I would love to know whether I'm right or just completely off the mark. Once the match is over in either arcade or versus mode, the demo shows a splash screen with some info about the full release before sending you back to the demo disc main menu. And by pressing select, you can actually exit this splash screen early. While not a huge time save since it's pretty short to begin with, it is a nice quality of life detail for repeat matches. Now to take a look at the full version of Star Wars Masters of Teras Kasi. Not only does LucasArts have a new logo animation, we're also treated to a classic Star Wars text crawl and intro cinematic. On the title screen, we can see that the copyright and trademark info has been removed, and the stars in the background seem a bit dimmer than before. When selecting the mode to play, the music has also been changed to the Imperial March instead of matching the title screen, and the font has been changed to all capital letters. In the character select screen, the scrolling font at the top now has separate colors for buttons and text, and the mode you have selected has also been included. The portraits for a few characters have also been slightly changed, along with the random button now being more of a teal instead of green. Going into a match, we can see that they added new screen transitions, and thank God they lowered the difficulty. It's still not the easiest game, the timing needed for combos is still incredibly tight, but the enemy AI is not nearly as oppressive as in the demo. A lot of the special moves and combos have had their inputs changed, and considering this video is already long enough, I'm not going to bother listing all of them. Some new particle effects have been added to certain attacks, mainly noticeable with Arden's projectiles. And the power bar at the bottom of the screen no longer fills entirely with blue before turning yellow. Now each section individually fills with blue, then yellow, before the next segment fills up. For the UI, the announcer will now say who the fighters are before the match, their character portraits being included as well. The round start dialogue also seems to be slightly altered.
Round 1, fight.
Round 1, fight.
The round start text has also been moved from the center of the screen down to the lower third, and the icons that show how each round was won have been updated, with a knockout being changed from a palm to a V, and a ring out having a new arrow design. For the stages themselves, both of their music tracks have been extended to last longer than a single round. And for Bespin specifically, the stage music has actually been replaced completely. And if you listen closely, you can also hear new background sound effects that have been added to each stage. Aside from that, the final changes to note are that fighters will now automatically stand up after a few seconds of being on the ground. The lighting on the Tatooine stage has been darkened a bit, and idling on the title screen will pull up one of several stat screens, where idling in the demo would automatically show the ending splash screen and exit out. The Masters of Teras Kasi demo is interesting to say the least. With its high difficulty and unintuitive controls, it is by far the most difficult demo we've looked at today. And while fighting game players might welcome the challenge, players not familiar with the genre are likely to get frustrated pretty quickly. Not being able to choose your opponent in the arcade mode makes it annoying to fight against the character you want. But if you have someone to play with, you at least have a unique Star Wars fighting game where you and your opponent will be on the same playing field. Now that we've gone through everything on US PlayStation Magazine's Demo Disc 3, it's time to rank all of the demos we've played through today. Keep in mind, I'm going to be ranking these demos based on their overall quality and replay value. Essentially, if we were taken back to 1997 and this demo disc was the only new game we got for the month, which of these demos could we get the most mileage out of? And since there's two clear groups of demos, let's do two separate lists instead of combining them all together. In fourth place, we have Test Drive 4 and Cardinal Sin. While Test Drive 4's demo doesn't do any one thing particularly bad, it's simply outclassed by the other racing demos on the disc. As the only car racing game, it does offer a more realistic type of racing compared to the other demos, but its simpler gameplay and long sections of straightaways and shallow turns make replays of the track less interesting. While the race length is pretty substantial for a racing demo, there is a lot of downtime between sessions, adding another reason to not start a new race immediately after. The Cardinal Sin demo having a versus mode is both a strong positive and its biggest downside. For a medium designed around 1v1 matches, being able to try it out against a human opponent lets you get a good idea of what the game will feel like, while also adding the replayability that inherently comes from playing with other people. But you can tell that the game is unfinished. With sluggish movement, magic attacks that don't work, and combos that don't connect, Cardinal Sin falls behind the other fighting games on the disc. And without a proper single-player option, it mostly serves as a subpar training mode. In third place, we have Ghost in the Shell and Versus. The Ghost in the Shell demo offers a one-to-one version of the first mission in the game, with buildings you can climb on, respawning enemies you can fight as long as you want, and a way for you to chase high scores. It's honestly a great demo. The only downside is that it's just too easy. None of the enemies are really a threat as long as you strafe around them. Even the boss doesn't pose a real challenge. But if you are a fan of the gameplay, the demo does a great job facilitating longer play sessions by not having a time limit and quickly getting you back into the action after each level. The Versus demo's biggest strength is its customization, letting you change the controls, rounds, and health bars to your liking, really let you fine-tune the demo experience even if you have to reset them every match. Both Mia and Oleg have their full movesets at their disposal, and being able to quickly start another match keeps the momentum going. But that momentum is then stopped by the built-in timer that will kick you out mid-match. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out one more time that the loading screen does have the tile sliding puzzle. While not a huge plus, it is technically the only puzzle game available on the disc. Both of these demos were actually really close to being in second place, being faithful ways to experience their full games without any egregious limitations. They just happened to be barely outclassed by these next two demos. Up next, in second place, we have Moto Racer and Star Wars Masters of Teras Kasi. Taken at face value, the Moto Racer demo doesn't seem all that special. With each session being followed by an unskippable slideshow that takes almost as long as the race itself, you would think this would be lower on the list. But that's why the unintended way to play makes this demo shine. Normally the demo offers the two distinct race types seen in the full game, but with the driving backward trick, the demo now has 4 ways to race. Along with competing for the fastest times, driving backwards adds an endurance mode to the demo where you try to race as long as possible without crashing. Not only does this circumvent the short time limit, it's a unique challenge that you can't even do in the full release. After everything I said about Star Wars Masters of Teras Kasi, you're probably wondering why it's in second place. While it's by no means a perfect game, as a demo, it does a couple things really well. Like Cardinal Sin, Masters of Teras Kasi's Versus mode has a lot of replayability due to 1v1 matches being the staple way to play fighting games. You can't overlook the fact that playing against another person adds a lot to the experience, especially since you'll both be held back by the clunky controls. And for single player, the insane difficulty is a blessing and a curse. If you get frustrated easily, I can guarantee this isn't going to be a fun demo. But if you do like a challenge, this demo will keep you occupied for hours on end. Being able to beat Arden Lin with Luke Skywalker in this demo should be a badge of honor for anyone able to do it, because I know I couldn't. For the final and most unique demos on this disc, we have Jet Moto 2 and Bushido Blade. With its incredibly fast and technical gameplay, Jet Moto 2 has such a high skill ceiling that the relatively short race times aren't even noticed. As soon as the race is done, you're ready to hop back in to take tighter corners and shorter routes. Not to mention the inclusion of head-to-head mode, making this the only racing game on the disc to have 2-player support. And even if you don't have someone to play with, this mode offers single players a chance to try out Vampira and practice the course without having to worry about other racers. The biggest downside is the controller layout. While getting back into the races is quick, the claw grip you'll find yourself using definitely starts to strain your hands during longer sessions, but by making sure to take breaks every now and then, you have yourself an incredibly solid demo. Lastly, we have Bushido Blade, which in my opinion is the best demo on this disc in general. While the other games we looked at today feel like demos, whether because they're a trimmed down version of their full release, or only let you play a specific segment, Bushido Blade feels like a complete experience. A samurai duel on equal footing with your opponent, where one move can end it instantly. The premise is simple, but the extensive move list, different stances, and combos lead to an in-depth combat system with a lot of room to improve your skills. The difficulty is also the perfect balance. Right when you get a few wins under your belt, the AI will pull out a combo that proves you haven't mastered the game just yet. And when a duel is finished, you pick up right where you left off in just a few seconds, ready to continue your training for as long as you want. While it obviously isn't as fleshed out as its full release, if someone asked you for an idea of what fighting games are like on the PlayStation, you could simply show them the Bushido Blade demo. A large open arena you can traverse, extensive combos, and an innovative injury system that leads to an immersive fighting game experience. Most demo discs are a combination of games from wildly different genres, casting a wide net to attract as many players as possible. but having a demo disc dedicated to one or two specific genres is a nice change of pace. It allows you to compare the newest releases within a niche, figuring out their individual quirks and which one would be the best fit for you. And looking back on them now, it's fun getting a snapshot of what these genres were like during this long past holiday season. With that, this is the end of our deep dive through the official US PlayStation Magazine Demo Disc 3. I hope you enjoyed the video, learned something new, or even found a new old game you want to try for yourself. But as always, thanks for joining me on this Demo Disc deep dive. I'll see you on the next one.